The Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2021 PGA Championship DraftKings Picks, player by player breakdowns. You want some pros, you want some cons, you make your own choices. That's what we got going on today with myself and Rick Gaiman of RickRunGood.com. Before we bring Rick in on the DraftKings hotline in the Pat Mayo Experience Temp Studios, a few things I need to tell you. Smash the like button for the episode. Give me your two favorite plays in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker in the $6,000 range this week. You want to play in the best tournament on DraftKings? Hit the description. You will find the Pat Mayo Experience Listeners League link. $100,000 of rake-free money guaranteed. You're not going to find that anywhere else. The only place you can find it is in the description of this video and podcast, so please go do that right now. Also, I got tons of money to give away in two separate draws now as well, because I just received more money for you, the peoples, to give away. Number one, subscribe to Mayo Media Network's newsletter. That's in the description. Subscribe to Mayo Media Network on YouTube. If you do both of those things, that's two names, two entries in the draw. Anytime you see a piece of content come out from me on the Twitter machine or the Facebooks, share it, retweet it, boom. You do it 30 times, that's 30 entries. And the big one, you can find this in the description as well. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts for the Pat Mayo Experience. Something you like about the show, leave your Twitter handle or email address so I can ping you if you end up winning. And if you do that, that's worth 10 entries in the draw. We got a $200 entry to give away, a bunch of 33s, a bunch of 20s, a bunch of 10s, plus starting at noon Eastern time on Tuesday, all the way through noon Eastern time on Wednesday, when my live chat and final picks will start live on Mayo Media Network. By the way, on Twitter, at the PME, I will be giving away 20 Millionaire Maker entries as well, so you can just tune into Twitter at noon Eastern time on Tuesday and see what that's all about. I think it's realistically just retweeting and leaving your DraftKings handle. DraftKings is taking care of that, but they've given me those 20 free entries to give away to you, the peoples out there. So I mean, if you're not going to win, you might as well at least lose with a free entry, is the way that I see it. It takes less than 30 seconds to do all of these things, so I would highly recommend that you do it. All the shows are out right now. Cheat sheets up on DraftKings Playbook, along with a huge article. The research show, the breakdown with Ben Raza is already out on the podcast feed. The picks with Feinberg, that's all there too. And like I mentioned, noon Eastern time on Wednesday, live final picks and live chat if you have any questions. And then on Friday, Cut Sweats Live with myself, Feinberg, Jeff is Feinberg, and Anderkush, should I say, and maybe some friends if we put them on the line as well to sweat through the cut line with everyone. So it's been a really fun week so far. Definitely not over yet, and this is really the big show. People love this at the Masters, so we had to run it back once again. Rick Gaiman, what's going on, man?
Pat, good to see you. This is either the worst idea we've ever had or the best idea we've ever had. Going through every player sounds great, and it's a lot of fun, and I don't know if we're crazy for doing it.
I think we're kind of crazy for doing it, because we're just going to be, when you're forced to give an opinion on every single player, yeah. I'm wrong all the time as it is, and I leave people out of it. I really have no opinion. Now I'm forced in a corner to have an opinion. Are you playing this guy? Are you not playing this guy? Is really what it boils down to, and you're going to be some of these takes are going to be really bad. I'm just throwing that out there.
Lots of great clips that will come out later showing us how stupid we are when one of these guys that we both dismiss in 3 seconds goes on to win this golf tournament. So yes, this is setting us up for failure, but I'm stoked about it.
Basically just, I can't believe you didn't pick Aaron Rai to win the PGA Championship and he won. I'll get that on Monday. It's sorry, find me someone who did that.
Yeah, it's brutal, and you're right. There are so many guys that I am lukewarm on or whatever, sitting on the fence on. But we're gonna go through. We're gonna figure it out. And hey, make your own decisions. If we talk about everybody, then they have to make their own decisions, and it's all good.
All right. Well, we're gonna start at the DraftKings top of the pricing and work our way down. That means we're starting with Rory McIlroy. So I ran the modeling right now on fantasynational.com. And if you go to fantasynational.com/Mayo, get the monthly membership, it takes you from the PGA Championship all the way through the US Open. So that's pretty good for 20% off. You want to use all the stats and the tools. Rory doesn't rank out super highly because he had some of those bad rounds the farther back we go. But short term, obviously he won at this course in 2012. He's coming off of a win at Quail Hollow. He is $11,500, And he's going to be super popular. I don't really know what to do to Rory here. I have no real negatives against him except for the fact that everyone's going to own him. And if you do use him, it's harder to build one of these balanced teams that you like at the back end.
It's certainly more troublesome when you look at like the medium form for Rory McIlroy, but I think there's a clear inflection point. It was the weeks after the Masters where he goes and he officially signs with Pete Cowan. They get his swing kind of all set up, and then he goes out and he wins his first event at Quail Hollow. So short term, obviously very good for Rory. I tend to agree with you. You know, I happen to be lucky enough to be sitting on a Rory PGA ticket from a couple of weeks ago. I kind of have my Rory fill. If I didn't, I would still be looking at this board, looking at some of the options further down and saying, wow, there's a pretty significant discount. Is Rory that much better here? And I also think, Pat, that listen, I love the idea that he won at the Ocean Course the last time we had it, but that's one event. One person had to win it. Whoever was going to win it, we'd be talking about this week. I think there's probably going to be too much stock put on that victory from what is essentially 9 years ago.
How much do you think that the course is going to be different? Because this is one thing I spoke about with Feinberg on the show, is because beyond Rory, the rest of the leaderboard in 2012 was a bunch of like short hitting Euros who are really good at scrambling and keep the ball in the middle of the fairway, which is sort of diametric opposite of what you would think would happen at this course when you look at the length of it. But I'm not necessarily against that, but how much of that can just be chalked up to maybe that was just an outlier and we don't really know anything about this course?
I think that the fact that it plays super long and will be the longest major championship course in history, that's nice. It's a great headline. I think that there's going to be a bit of an emphasis on maybe those shorter guys, or I think more importantly, around the green players. You know, think about it. If you're hitting longer shots into every single green, your dispersion is getting wider. If your dispersion is getting wider, you are missing more greens. When we saw Rory win this event, he shot a 66 on Sunday. He wasn't throwing darts at every single pin. His short game was magic. He referenced that. He said his best short game week ever was this week in 2012. So I think that there is certainly a type of golfer. I don't know if it's the shorter hitter, but maybe more of the plotter around the green guys that can have a lot of success here, because you're going to have a complete game. Conditions are going to be tough. If the wind starts to kick, who knows? The weather forecast looks pretty clean right now, but I think there's a couple of different ways to get to victory here.
So what you're saying is that Brennan Todd is going to win the PGA Championship?
Sure. Yeah. The Todd father. No, I think that I love his short game. The rest of it is scary stuff, but that types of guys like that, like a Patrick Reed short game kind of specialist, I think are a little bit more intriguing than people want to give him credit for this week.
Next up on the list, another guy with an excellent short game. We don't really know about the putting week to week, and the driving can be a bit capricious, but the irons definitely dialed in. He's $11,300, a former PGA champion himself. It's Justin Thomas, and it doesn't seem like he's getting a whole lot of buzz in the outright betting market, but I would wager that he's going to end up being pretty popular on DraftKings just because that $200 discount off Rory can save you so much at the back end unless you're really digging deep into the European Tour players who are in the 6,000s. I would highly recommend everyone go tune into European Tour picks and bets on Mayo Media Network with Tom Jacobs and Skylar Hoke, who that's what they're focusing on this week, is breaking down some of those European players who you just might not be that familiar with and seeing if they're good course fits and who they like over there. So highly recommend you go check that out. I like Justin Thomas a lot. Probably not going to get to him here.
I might. What I love about Justin Thomas is that he's incredibly on brand. You know exactly what to expect out of him. He's going to likely be one of the best players in the world from tee to green. If the driver does get loose, it gets really loose, but that's not that much of a concern for me because when it's going right, things are fantastic. And then the big question mark always revolves around the putter. If he putts to a 0, he's likely to contend. If he gains a stroke, gains 2, he might win this golf tournament, but he's certainly capable of losing 4 or 5 strokes on the greens. But I think we know that. So the path to victory, what we talk about all the time, it's pretty wide for JT. Is he going to putt well? That's really the only thing that has to go right for him to end up hoisting a trophy on Sunday at this course or any other course on planet Earth. So JT to me provides safety and security because he is on brand. He is consistent. We know his flaws. We know his strengths. I think that there are guys in the 10K range that I like more, but I think this is a very fair price on Justin Thomas.
There's guys that you like more in the 10K range. So let's just drop to Dustin Johnson at $10,900. I love Dustin this week. Not to say that I know where his health status is or even where his game is at, although it looks like the driver is back. The iron started doing much better at both Heritage and Valspar, and he lost the ability to chip and putt. But that's not something I'm really too concerned about with Dustin Johnson over time. I just like him because his game is in flux right now. And when I start looking at the ownership percentages on some of these other guys, I don't mind the price discount you get for the number one player in the world, despite the fact that he has looked nothing like the number one player in the world recently. But if he's okay, I don't think a lot of people are going to own him. When I say not a lot of people are going to own him, he'll be like 10% owned, not 25% owned like you normally would be at this price point, because you're catching him on the dip. Buy the dip on Dustin Johnson and hope to get lucky that he's okay, because if he's okay, he's going to be great here.
For sure. And even like 80% of Dustin Johnson is better than the vast majority of the players in the world. I agree with the sentiment that there's a lot of incentive to go up and get Rory McIlroy. There's a lot of incentive to go up and get Justin Thomas. There is also incentive to drop on down to a Bryson DeChambeau or a Jordan Spieth and save the dollars, leaving Dustin Johnson kind of in this sandwich pricing, everybody shrugging their shoulders, not knowing what to do with him. And I think the phrase, hey, can DJ flip a switch? I think that is overused. We talk about it all the time. If there is such a thing of flipping a switch, DJ does it better than most guys. And I would agree with your sentiment, Pat, around it hasn't been good, but it hasn't been good by both Dustin Johnson standards, and it's also getting better. The 5 strokes that he gained in ball striking at the Valspar. And what I like about DJ is the putter's volatile. It's not always bad. It's not always good. He lost 10 strokes at the workday. He gains 5 at the RBC Heritage. Having a large range of outcomes with the flat stick makes you super dangerous for winning golf tournaments, which, oh, by the way, Dustin Johnson wins a lot of golf tournaments.
And he hasn't won yet this year, so he has to preserve his streak of actually getting a win for each of the past 12 years running. So it'd be a nice time to go out and do that, or then he'll end up winning, like, I don't know, Colonial, and then he'll win like 3 in a row, because Dustin tends to go on heaters once he ends up going. But my real attraction to Dustin this week, like I said, is the unknown, that people are scared of him. And that doesn't mean he's not going to go out and shoot plus 10 in the first round and be completely out of it. That's on the table too. But the way that I kind of think about it is, you know, when we think about ownerships up top, like there is no real difference to me between Rory, JT, Dustin, Rahm, Bryson, and even realistically, Spieth, Morikawa, Xander, Brooks on that level, that if one of these guys goes out and plays their best, they're going to win. And I can't tell you which one is going to play their best. That's, you know, the point of this. But if it is Dustin, you know, he's going to win if he plays his best. Now, will he play his best? Probably not. Is he going to win? Probably not. Those are what the odds are telling you. But that's the same case that you can make for a lot of these guys right now.
And of the guys that you named, if you pitted them against each other in head-to-heads, they'd all probably be 55-45, 58-42. It would be super close. And you're going to look at ownerships this week, especially as we get closer to lock, that are much different than that 55-45, much different than that 58-42. You're going to see potentially, let's say Rory McIlroy's 20%, Dustin Johnson is 10% owned. Is Rory McIlroy twice as likely to beat, you know, Dustin Johnson this week in his finishing position or his DraftKings points or whatever you want to look at? Certainly not. So that's where the game theory comes in. I think it's very clear that DJ is the odd man out above 10K, just because of the question marks and I mean, we've got guys playing legitimately great leading into this event that I think are going to get a lot of love.
Well, one guy who's kind of just in flux as well right now, at least recently, is Jon Rahm. He's next in the DraftKings pricing. I like Rahm a lot. If you want to play the European narrative, first-time winner narrative, there you go. There's Jon Rahm. This, on paper, seems like it's going to be a very good course for him, and I'm kind of wishy-washy on it. Like, we'll get to Bryson in a second, because there was 2 guys that I really liked above $10,000, and if I wanted to add a third, I felt like I could do that. And I don't know if Rahm is going to be the one for me. Like, I'm probably going to pass on Rory, pass on Thomas, use some Dustin. Is Rahm making that shortlist for you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty bullish on Rahm. I mean, he doesn't have a win. He doesn't have a trophy on the mantle in his last, 12 starts or so, but he's piled up. I think he's now up to 8 top 10s in his last 13. He's always around. The missed cut at the Wells Fargo Championship, it was ugly, but the way that he did it, I think, was encouraging. He lost a bunch of strokes around the green. He lost strokes putting, and then he kind of figured that out at the Byron Nelson. I think this is a course that you are going to need to lean into your weapon, and Jon Rahm's weapon is his driver. That is a really good sign. I was digging through my database at rickrungood.com, and I think we're up to 28 straight events, Pat, that Jon Rahm has gained strokes off the tee. 28 in a row. The next longest streak in the last 2 years is like 5. It's like crazy what he's been able to do. He's got that weapon in the bag. It gives him such a high floor. We're seeing the results of that, and it is just a matter of time before he snaps through and adds a major to his resume.
Do you think you would play Rahm over Dustin in this spot?
I would, yeah, in a vacuum. Yeah. I mean, he's $400 cheaper. I think that his floor is higher. I think his ceiling is likely the same. Maybe that's a knock at Dustin Johnson, but I think they're close enough to say Rahm should get the nod here.
Okay, let's drop down to Bryson. He is even cheaper than Rahm. He's at $10,200. I would expect Bryson to be popular. And of course, when you look at the scorecard and it says 7,800 plus yards, like, oh, I can use Bryson. He's also, per fantasynational.com right now, over the past 24 rounds, the best player in the field on approaches from over 200 yards in terms of proximity gain. So that's always nice when you have these longer holes. You have Bryson, you know that he has the distance. Plus, he putts much better than everyone else who is in the $10,000 range. I guess the pushback would be is one, he's cusp picked to win. That's never a good sign. Two, if the wind becomes a factor, which is really the only defense that this course has and really causes nightmares for a lot of players, that we've seen Bryson play really well at hard courses with a lot of long rough, that if this becomes a course where all of a sudden you're dealing with 17 mile per hour wind from the northeast, and then 2 holes later, it's 25 miles per hour from the southwest, that Bryson seems to be someone who wants to know what's going on. Jeff kind of said it was a lot like Andy Reid coming out of a bye week in the NFL. Like, you have 2 weeks to prepare for this one team, and he's going to prepare to the best version of what he can do and be so prepared that he's going to dominate and really know that what he can do. I feel like if the wind picks up and the conditions pick up, and it's really random with the directions and the speeds of the wind, and it changes a lot, which we saw in 2012, that's just going to throw him out of whack just a little bit. He's not great at adjusting hole by hole. He's good at adjusting round by round, but once he gets out of his rhythm, it feels like he's way out of it.
Yes, he does not like constantly changing variables because he's already done all the math and now they're changing on him in the middle of a hole or in the middle of a round and things start to go sideways, and it usually takes him. Then he goes and grinds at the range for 3 hours and he figures it all out. I think the upside of Bryson is incredibly appealing because when he puts it all together, I mean, some of the stuff that he's doing, at least on paper, is unbelievable. But to me, it looks like he's playing a little bit of whack-a-mole right now. You know, we have some weeks like the Wells Fargo Championship where he loses over 5 strokes on approach, still finishes inside the top 10 there. Then he, last week at the Byron Nelson, he's a loser on the greens in a pretty significant way. That was one of his worst putting performances in recent memory. So I think he's just playing a little bit of a whack-a-mole right now. One thing is a little bit of off, which scares me. I would just like to probably save Bryson for like Torrey should be a perfect spot for him. It'll play long. The thickness of the rough and the length of it should play into his strengths a bit more. I'm a little bit worried that this is just not a great setup for Bryson.
Oh, we're going to see. This is the take that people are going to clip when he wins by 10.
I know. And he's the most likely guy to win this by 10.
I mean, if you ask Jeff, it's probably Hovland. That's me. Now I get into very anti-Pat Mayo territory with Jordan Spieth. He comes in at $10,100. There's a chance that Spieth is probably the highest owned guy on this slate, or at least he's going to be one of the top 5. People are digging Spieth right now. He's playing excellent golf, and the type of players that we've just been talking about, where when you look past Rory at that former leaderboard, sort of scrambling wizards that aren't super long off the tee, but his irons have been amazing right now. We know what he can do on the greens and around the green, and the length has been going up for him as the accuracy has been going down. But if he can just keep it in the fairway, and even if he doesn't, he is one of the few players on tour that you put him in the worst possible position, he's going to find a way to get out of it. That's just what he does, and you have to come to accept that at this point. It feels like this PGA Championship in particular is kind of perfectly suited for him.
I couldn't agree more. I think Jordan Spieth, not only with the lead-in form, and I'm not talking about 1, 2, or 3 weeks, I'm talking about 5 months at this point. Since the start of 2021, no one has gained more strokes per round than Jordan Spieth. It's not particularly close. He's doing it on approach. He essentially, in the last 5 months, has turned into Colin Morikawa on approach, and we know Morikawa is likely the best ball striker on planet Earth. And then he has added or retained the short game magic, and the driver's like, okay. And if the driver's okay, that's going to be just fine for Jordan Spieth. I agree with you. Tough conditions where things turn into, less of the mechanic side of it and more into the artist, that turns Jordan Spieth on, right? That's what gets him headed in the right direction. He can kind of visualize a lot of these shots. He's never out of it, and he is just on fire. And Kiowa is an excellent spot for him. The short game stuff, I could not love Spieth more. I understand it is certainly going to come with a price and an ownership, but at $10,100, it is well worth it.
Is there an ownership level you think he can get to where you would not play him?
Yeah. I mean, 28 would probably start to scare me. I don't know if he can get that high, although you inject a bunch of casuals this week for PGA Championship and they see Jordan Spieth and maybe they click the game logs and they saw he's gone 9th, 3rd, and 1st in his last 3 starts and we get him over 30%. But if it was like 28 is probably my number there.
Well, I think that there are 2 factors determining his ownership right now. One is the great form and the popularity of Jordan Spieth amongst people that don't do this week in and week out, but will enter the DraftKings Millionaire Maker. So that's going to boost it up anyway. And then there's this price point that lineups are just easier to make if Spieth is your first guy in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the flexibility that you get saving $1,400 from a Rory McIlroy to Jordan Spieth and being able to allocate that to your 5 other golfers. So if I can take a 28 or even 30% owned Jordan Spieth, have more flexibility down there, kind of find different ways to be contrarian or to have leverage. I mean, it's really appealing. There's really no knock against Jordan Spieth this week.
Right now, and obviously this is still very early in the week, you'll want to go to fantasynational.com on Wednesday evening or even wake up super early on Thursday morning to see, after people have made their lineups and come to their final conclusions, what the ownership level is starting to look like. Because right now I have him up around 23% as the second highest owned guy in the Millionaire Maker. And it's funny because we used to have this provision where like, hey, take whatever Tiger's ownership and add like 5% to it, because that's just normally what happens. That is what happened when Tiger first started coming back. Then there was like a dip. Spieth is now quickly becoming that guy.
It makes sense, right? I mean, people play who they want to play, who they like, who they want to root for. It is why Sergio Garcia is always less owned than he should. It's why Ian Poulter is always less owned than he probably should be. It's why Ricky Fowler and Phil Mickelson are always more owned than they should be. There are certainly guys that, as you're putting your hard-earned dollars on the line, you want to root for the guys that you like.
Morikawa's next at $9,800. He was the second pick of Tim Andercust to win this championship. He did us great last year at the PGA Championship. What a hero. It's going to be all about greens and regulation for him. He's going to hit the fairway. He's the most Stenson setup type player there is at this course. He's long enough and he hits his long irons well enough that I'm not too concerned about the daunting length of this course. The issue is that if he's not hitting all the greens in regulation, it's a lot like the Victor Hovland problem, is what happens then? These guys are not good short game players whatsoever. That doesn't mean they can't have weeks where they're really good on the greens and around the greens, because we've seen that. But consistently, they're not great, and they get themselves into a lot of problems. So Morikawa is a really interesting one for me, only because I think at the top of his skill set, he's going to be great if he can really come through with that ball striking. And if the putting comes through like we saw at Concession, he's going to be tough to beat. And even the last time we saw him was at a Pete Dye course, at the Heritage. It's not like he was bad that week. He led everyone in approach. It's just he had a terrible Sunday. It happens from time to time. You don't win every single tournament. So I'm kind of torn on Morikawa right now. There's the push and pull with him where I feel like I'm going to use him a lot or I'm not going to use him at all. And if it comes down between him and Spieth, I think I'm deciding with Spieth right now.
The problem is, he's right below Jordan Spieth. And if you have to make that decision, it would be tough to avoid Spieth. I'm pretty warm on Morikawa. We know all the things that I just described, how great Jordan Spieth has been. Well, since the start of the year, Morikawa has been just the same on approach, and he's been better off the tee. The problem, as you indicate, Pat, comes in the short game. And I will give him credit. Since the start of 2021, he's about a 0 around the green player. Now, he's better out of bunkers than he is out of thick rough. And we know they're just kind of like weird bunkering situations at Kiowa this week. And then the putter, while it's not good on average, he does have his weeks, which I think is good. It's not a Keegan Bradley situation where he's going to lose every single week and you're hoping for a 0. It's not a Sergio Garcia putting situation. It is over the season. He is a losing putter, but in individual tournaments, he can go off and he can gain 4 strokes at the workday, 3.2 at the Sony Open. Now he could lose you 7 and things like that along the way, but I like the volatile results with his flat stick.
The last 3 times that he has gained over 4 strokes putting in an event, he's won that event. So he's just, it's like I keep calling him Stenson. If his short game was a little bit better, he'd essentially be Justin Thomas, wouldn't he?
I think that's fair. Yeah, because the rest of the ball striking is unbelievable. I mean, I've been trying to put it into context, and it's just hard to continue to say that Morikawa is the best ball striker on earth. Like, what does it mean? Like, it's not even particularly close. And we've been raving about what Jordan Spieth has been doing, and Jordan Spieth's been doing it for 5 months. Morikawa's been doing it like since he came on tour. It really is next level. Some of the best, since the shot link data started, he's one of the best approach players ever. And I know it's a smaller sample size than a lot of other guys, but it's really, I don't know how else to illustrate how good he is with a wedge or an iron in his hands.
The only thing that's kind of holding him back right now, despite the approach still being up there, he's first in strokes gained approach over the past 24 rounds. He's actually 60th in this field in approaches from beyond 200 yards, which it doesn't really concern me all that much, but it's just very odd that, he from 175 to 200, he's great, but once you get to 200 and beyond, he's not so great anymore, which I just found surprising.
Yeah, and I always wonder about, I don't know how many shots he has from that range. And if it's just, there could be a million things. There could be a bad wind for him. It could be in a gap of yardages, things like that. So once we start getting out there and there's less and less of those shots available, I start to kind of, worry about that data a bit less.
Xander Schauffele is next at $9,600, expected to be a very popular play for good reason. The guy just dominates at majors in terms of placements, not so much winning the event, but how many teams do you think will start either Spieth Xander or Spieth Victor?
Oh yeah, the Spieth Victor one is going to be that's going to be the most popular one, and then Spieth Xander I think is certainly going to be popular. Now it is starting to look like, especially since what Patrick Cantlay's been up to the last couple of weeks, that Xander did a lot of the carrying at the Zurich Classic to get them to that T11 spot. We're starting to see the metrics really get back to the really great version of Xander Schauffele. And we saw him early in 2021 start to figure out the driver, hit the ball a little bit further, gain 3 or 4 strokes off the tee. We're starting to see signs of that again. He was magnificent with the driver at Augusta National. If I think that's the club. He's solid across the board, but if he goes to the next level with the driver, I think it's watch out world, because that would be the path for him to start like winning these golf tournaments more often.
Worth noting too that despite some of the distance that he gives up, I mean, he's longer than Morikawa. Of like the big top end players, he's 62nd in this field in fairways gained, and that's much better than anyone besides Jon Rahm. Really, it's Rahm and Schauffele, and then you have Morikawa, who's inside the top 10, because that's such a big part of his game, is just hitting all of his shots from the fairway, which you're going to need to do this week. So it's really difficult for me to parse who I want from this range, because you've just made very compelling cases for basically the past 6 guys. Like Rory, too popular, too pricey. I can live without having him. If Rory beats me, I lose a lot anyway. It's not that big of a deal to me. Justin Thomas, I feel good enough with Dustin, Rahm, or Spieth down the list, but Morikawa versus Schauffele to me is so tough. And then we get into Brooks next at $9,500. He's down to 50 to 1 in the betting market. I don't think that you can play him at this price, but where is his game at right now? Is he still hurt, or is he just shaking off rust?
I don't know, and I'm not sure he knows, Pat. The idea of him playing the Byron Nelson last week, it felt like he just has to get some reps in before he gets to Kiowa. You can't show up at Kiowa with no competitive rounds. I'm less optimistic now after watching him lose 2 strokes on approach, another 4.5 on the putting greens. I'm also, if you watch it, the guy, I can't watch him bend down and put his ball, he just can't bend down. He can't flex his knee. It's actually difficult to watch at times. So I think the way that I would approach Brooks this week is, I think he's much too risky in DFS formats, especially for the price tag. If he's just as likely to miss the cut as he is to finish inside, I don't know, the top 10 or whatever, it's not worth the price. I would rather, if you need exposure to Brooks, bet him outright. Like if he's on, he's going to contend. If not, I think you're going to see a week like we saw last week, which is super scary.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you too. If you want any sort of Brooks action, bet him, leave him alone in DFS, because he is going to be super lowly owned, as some of these other people are. Like, you can start your teams with Spieth and Victor Hovland if you want, 2 of the highest projected owned players. I think there's enough ways to alleviate ownership down the list that if I was confident in my guys at the top, even though they were popular, then I would have no problem with it. I'll eat the 2 chalkiest guys at the top. That's fine with me if I believe in them enough. Like, I look at some of these mid $7,000 guys, and I like the guys no one else likes, so it's not that big of a deal for me.
Yeah, exactly. I think we are better at kind of determining the outcomes of some of the top guys than we are of some of the bottom guys. So if you're taking the chalk, I'd rather take it up top and then worry about being different in the 7K range. Like I always hate being on the chalky 7K guy because he's probably $7,000 for a reason. Although there is one in this field that might break that mold because the pricing came out early. But I agree. I'd rather just be eating the chalk at the top of the board.
Hideki is next, coming off his Masters win, and his stats are really interesting from the Byron Nelson a week ago. Ball striking, supreme. Putted, well, couldn't chip. Lost 4.5 strokes around the green, which is about the most anti-Hideki thing that you could ever imagine. And it doesn't seem like anyone wants to use him here. I originally had no interest in playing him on DraftKings, and I was looking in this $9,000 range, and it does seem like the guys that no one wants to play are Brooks, Hideki, and Cantlay. And I just look at those three names like, give me Hideki over those other two, like 1,000 times out of 1,000 right now.
Yeah. So I was pretty down on Hideki last week. I had no idea what to expect, how much practice time he had. And to his credit, he was pretty phenomenal. 2.6 off the tee, 3.2 on approach, that around the green game that you're referencing. So he lost 4.49. That is by far his worst around the green week in my database from rickrungood.com. I've got him going back to 2015, by far almost twice as bad as his next worst. So we assume that is not going to happen again. I'm pretty impressed with what Hideki did last week. We've been talking about how important ball striking is. He is usually very good around the greens, and the putter, believe it or not, the Hideki putter, the thing we have been begging him to fix for 5, 6, 7 years, however long it's been, he's gained strokes in 2 straight, 3 of his last 4, 4 of his last 6, and 5 of his last 8, and the weeks that he lost less than 2. This is the blueprint for Hideki Matsuyama to win golf tournaments.
And even at this price point, you don't need him to win, because I'm seeing him right now. Like, he's going to come in at least early in the week, somewhere between like 4 and 7% owned in the Millionaire Maker. And that's just so much more appealing to me versus the rest of the low owned guys in this range, because we know what his upside is. He's won the Masters and he's coming off a week with the ball striking, like you said, in a weird outlier, bad performance around the green that you're probably not going to see again. That even if you can jam in Hideki and he, comes in third or something like that, that's going to be such a huge differentiator for you in this range. So I think I may have just talked myself into Hideki, and I'll probably end up playing him over Morikawa. That's where my mind is going right now.
Interesting. Yeah, I think he's a really great pivot. So we're going to talk about Viktor Hovland next, but that Hovland Morikawa, they're going to eat up a ton of that. Xander's in there as well. The really good upside pivot appears to be Hideki. I agree. I think we just talked ourselves into him.
Well, let's have the Hovland discussion now. Projected to be the highest owned player on this slate. He is $9,300, and there's very little negative that you can say about Viktor Hovland, especially with his lead-in form. The only thing you can really point to is that he sucks around the greens. But half the time he chips it in. He either chips it over the green or he chips it in the hole. It's just a really bizarre circumstance. But the putting has been really good. There's going to be so many people that reference the Paspalum greens this week, and both of his wins have come on that green surfaces. Right. People will not mention that they came against absolute jabronis in that field and not the best players in the world. So take with that what you want, that Viktor played really well and beat a bunch of scrubs while all the good players were off playing like a WGC or resting at home when he won the Mayakoba. But I get why everyone wants to play him. I want to play him this week. But I think there becomes a breaking point where, I'm going to bet the don't pass line on him and maybe just go full fade if it gets too ridiculous and just pray he has a bad Viktor week around the greens and a bad Viktor week on the greens, which means he could miss the cut.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. He is, to his credit, much improved around the greens since those victories, and since he had the famous interview where he said, "I suck at chipping" after winning the Puerto Rico Open. He's been much improved. So if you look at all of his rounds, I've got 37 of them measured since the start of 2021. He's been a 0 around the green player, 0.020, and he's been gaining everywhere else. I agree that the conversation about the Paspalum greens is going to be completely overblown because we don't talk about the guys who have 2 wins on Bentgrass or 2 wins on Bermuda, but we do because there's only a handful of courses that we get these Paspalum greens. So I tend to agree. Hovland is an excellent play. He is going to be incredibly popular, and I believe that there are other appealing 9K options to give you viable pivots in any direction that you want to go, whether you want to go down just a little bit in ownership, whether you want to go down a lot in ownership. I think that this 9K range offers a little bit of everything.
I don't want to rehash what Ben and I talked about on Saturday's show, where we did our initial look at the field, really broke down the ranges and talk about lineup construction. So a little bit different than a player-by-player breakdown. But it just came with the opportunity cost and how you need to get to the top of the DraftKings Millionaire Maker or a Giant Field GPP. Like, it's one thing in a 3-max, like the Pat Mayo Experience Listeners League, which everyone should play in right now. In the link to the link is in the description if you want to play. It's already over half full, so you might want to go get your spot right now to get your hands on some of that $100,000 guaranteed with no rake being taken out of it whatsoever. So flatter payouts, more of the prize pool is paid. It's a great tournament. You should play in it. But if we're looking at Hideki, and let's just use round numbers here. 5% ownership on Hideki, 25% ownership on Victor Hovland. I think objectively, I think that Hovland is a better play. But is he 5 times as better a play? Probably not. And what the point that Ben made too is that when you're dealing with a 25% own and a 5% own, and you do have them rated somewhat similar, at least within the same ballpark, is that when you're trying to beat 177,000 other entries, if the 5% guy wins, you actually have a chance to win. If Hovland wins, like, yeah, yes, you would need him to win, but you're still taking on like 50,000 other entries.
Yeah, and you will need to have like not only first if Hovland wins, but you'll need to have like second and third and like 3 more guys inside the top 10. If you get a Hideki at 5% as a winner, you have a little bit more flexibility with some of your other guys. You just don't need to be as perfect. And, Hideki could be a really good reason to play Jordan Spieth or play some of these chalkier guys at the top and say, okay, well, my next man in is going to be the guy that I think gives me a lot more leverage on the field than my first man in.
Next player up is Webb Simpson. Webb's results this year, shockingly good when you go and look at his game log. He did just withdraw from the Wells Fargo Championship with a neck injury. He never hit a shot there and screwed up a lot of people's one-and-dones and DraftKings lineup because he didn't tell anyone until the tee-off had actually locked. But when we started referencing players off the beginning, accurate players, good iron players, good short game players, and hell, let's just call him a Pete Dye specialist. Why not Webb?
It's a good question. And then one that I don't have an answer for. The neck injury / withdrawal that burned everybody is likely to keep his ownership down. The fact that he's not very sexy, he doesn't bomb it. I think that's okay. He hits that little baby draw. I think if he hits it in the fairway, he can get a lot of run out. And then once he's in the fairway, he's one of the best players that we have on the PGA Tour. He can throw darts. He can get up and down. He can get a putter going. He's won a major championship. There really is, to me, not many arguments against Webb Simpson other than the unknown of the injury and the fact that he hasn't played since Heritage. That's the last time we saw him, and he finished in the top 10 there. So I don't really have many concerns if you're willing to take on the perceived risk. He could have just woke up with that neck injury. I mean, he's on his home course, been like, not even going to try it. I'll save it. Make sure I'm ready in a couple of weeks. I'm not that worried about it.
So next is Patrick Reed at $9,100, a similar type of player, less consistent, but when he hits his upside, we know how good it is. We've seen him win on longer courses than you would expect over time. Harder courses, you need to get the ball up and down. Patrick Reed's probably the guy that you're going to tap on the shoulder, number 1 overall draft pick. Would he be your number 1 guy? You're in the rough, 23 yards from a hole, have to get over a bunker and need to put it within 3 feet. Is Patrick Reed the guy?
I think he has to be, right? I mean, he's proven it not only time and time again, but in big spots. He loves that stuff back against the wall, whether it's a difficult course, whether it's a big time event, whether it's a Ryder Cup, whatever it is, he loves that. So yeah, he's probably the guy. And I mentioned him earlier as the other way to win. The one way to win at Kiowa is hit every fairway, hit every green, get hot with the putter, run away with it that way. The probably more likely way is you're going to miss greens. You are going to have to get up and down. Patrick Reed's awesome at that. We know he's a big game hunter, right? We talk about his 9 PGA Tour wins. He just did it at Torrey Pines in what I perceive is going to be a similar fashion in February. I mean, there's a lot going for Reed because he actually has winning upside. We talk about that a lot, Pat, and a lot of guys don't have it. Patrick Reed actually has it.
Others melt coming down the stretch. Patrick Reed does not. It infuses him. Bryson, Reed, and Justin Thomas, I feel like are the best 3 if they're within 2 of the lead or 3 of the lead going into Sunday. Obviously, they don't win every single time, but you're terrified if you have a bet on anyone else.
Yeah, he's just not going anywhere. You worry when that putter is going to heat up. I mean, he gained 6 strokes putting in like 2 of his last 3 starts. It can get absolutely scorching, and then he doesn't have to be as great everywhere else. And he hits that. He has, what I like about him is he has a go-to shot off the tee, that little low draw that he runs out there, and he knows how to control it. That's super valuable. Just kind of getting yourself off on the right foot, especially as fairways become more and more difficult to hit.
Patrick Cantlay's next at an even $9,000. His betting market has plummeted. He has been bad for about 6 weeks now. He's missed 4 consecutive cuts, if we don't count the Team Zurich, which I will only count when I talk about Cam Smith or Mark Leishman because they won. Other than that, I'm just really going to throw it out. In stroke play singles events, Cantlay's been bad. He's essentially been bad since the first 2 rounds at the match play. Like, I think he got so triggered he didn't make it to the next round after playing so well that it broke his brain. And now he's no good anymore. But no one is using Patrick Cantlay. I don't want to use Patrick Cantlay. I'm not going to be using Patrick Cantlay because everything just looks off for him right now. But coming into the season, if you were to say this is a long Pete Dye course on the coast, Patrick Cantlay would be one of the first 5 names you would say.
I am a huge sucker for Patrick Cantlay, and I'm having trouble also finding a way to get in on him this week. You know, he has been from tee to green, however far you want to go back, a year, 6 months, whatever. He's been one of the best players on tour. I will say, while the rest of his game hasn't been great, I'm hoping that the reason for his recent run is the struggles with the putter. So I've got 6 straight events here, single events or individual events in which he's lost strokes putting. I'm scrolling back in my database. I can't really find another occasion in which he's done that. We know he was switching between kind of a mallet style and his normal blade putter, and he's trying to figure it all out. That is scary stuff. But if that's the one thing that I think is really bad, which I believe that to be true, I'm a bit more optimistic, but man, Pat, I'm like a 3 out of 10. Like I'm worried. This is a shockingly bad stretch of golf for him, and I don't really know how else to explain it.
If it was just the putting, I could live with that and gamble on that it flips. But the irons have been so bad when that is the one thing that he does so well. Like when I think about Patrick Cantlay in my mind, I think about a guy who's putting from 24 feet for birdie on every hole. And if he makes 4 of them during a round, he's going to be great. If he gets super hot with the irons, watch out. But he's not that guy right now. And his scrambling is around the green game, by and large, has improved so much. He's really a test case for Hovland of someone who goes from bad to really good around the greens, putting in the effort and letting the years go by and really figuring that out. But when you have to rely on it every time, like what's happening right now, it's not good.
Yeah, it's ugly stuff. I think we broke him. He was very popular that first week that he missed the cut, Players Championship, misses the cut there, and then has really never been the same. The match play throws him out of whack. It's bad, Pat. I wish I had a better case for him.
Well, I got a good case coming up next for $8,900. Cameron Smith, my pick to win this tournament. My one and done selection of the week. So get on him at 45-1. The Aussie, he loves the wind. It's all about driving with Cameron Smith right now. I've seen him pop enough times with the putter. I'm not too concerned about it. I mean, he could have a bad putting week, and then he's not going to win, but the putting can be up there. We've seen the spike weeks. The around the green game is immaculate, and I feel like he's a lot like Spieth in the sense that if it comes to you need some magic out of weird lies, and it does feel like that's going to be the case here, that he's probably the guy that you want. The long irons are so great, and although it's on the ocean, there's very little water that he can hit the ball into 8 times in a row off the tee to really sink him.
That is true. You know, I look at the strength of field of some of these really good results that he's been in. So just going back a little bit, you know, we go to the CJ Cup. That's a no-cut event at the end of last year. 78 of generally the top players in the world. He finished 11th there. 4th at the Zozo, runner-up at the Masters. That was that stretch of golf. 4th at Riviera, the Genesis. That's a great field. 11th at the Workday. That's a WGC. 17th at the Players. 10th at the Masters again. 9th at the RBC Heritage. Then he goes out and he wins the Zurich Classic with his partner, Mark Leishman. There is little to say about Cam Smith that worries me. I agree with you. The short game is immaculate. Magical, I think, is the word that you used. And if he can just find enough fairways, or even not find fairways, just don't lose strokes off the tee, I think he becomes a very appealing option here. And he's proven to us now like a half a dozen times in the last couple of months that it doesn't matter who else is in the field. He can find a way to put his name on the first page of the leaderboard.
So, hey, we're both on Cam Smith. Here we go. So he's destined to miss the cut now. Bet him to miss the cut at like 3-1, and you're going to be fine. Will Zalatoris, people are kind of jumping off the bandwagon just a little bit. He's $8,800, but at the Byron Nelson, where I bet him to win, I know a lot of people bet him to win. He was very highly owned on DraftKings. He ended up inside the top 20. And why did he end up inside the top 20 and not first place? Because he couldn't putt. It was ridiculous how bad he was. He led the field in approach. I think this is such a nice time to buy Will Z here.
I couldn't agree more. This is the blueprint. We talk about it all the time. He gains 9.5 strokes, leads the field at the Byron Nelson. He loses 4.3, his second worst putting performance as a professional. Obviously, a very small sample size compared to some of the other guys in this field. But I only have in my database twice in which he has lost over 2.2 strokes putting, and he lost 4 last week. Unlikely for that to happen again. I agree. Especially if people are hopping off the Zalatoris train, this kid's legit. He's awesome, and this is the time to buy.
It's funny too, because it's really dependent on what you look at, like, and what the expectations are for some players. Like if it was, I don't know, like I played a lot of Patton Kizzire last week. If Patton Kizzire had come T17 instead of second, you'd be like, oh man, Patton Kizzire had a really good week. He was very highly owned. He was $7,300. He did exactly what I wanted him to do. There was just so much hype around Will Z last week. He was expensive. People bet him at 25 to 1 or 30 to 1, whatever he ended up coming in at. And it's been 2 weeks in a row now because I bet him at Quail Hollow as well, and he missed the cut there. That the expectations for him were set so high that there was no way he could ever really achieve them. And as we just kind of pointed out, that the ball striking was there. That was fine. It was just the putting. And I look back at his 2 past majors. So the Masters this year didn't qualify the time before, then the U.S. Open. 2nd and 6th. It's almost like Cameron Smith. When the field gets tough, he gets good.
And that is a great point about like the perception versus reality issue that most people have. We're going to have that conversation when we get down to Sam Burns as well. So I agree. There are certainly expectations that you have to kind of throw out the window and say, did this person play well? Is there a reason for us to buy back in? All that good stuff.
Daniel, how's your burger? Is up next. Per the betting odds, he's actually one of the relative values in the DraftKings pricing at $8,600. Stormed the leaderboard on Sunday at Byron Nelson, which is, of course, I don't think has much in relation to this one because it was super easy. But the ball striking was excellent. He putted very poorly on day 1 and almost recaptured everything by the end of the week. He was very, very good. He's been very, very good at a lot of these things. But I think that he's going to be just a bit too popular for me, and I don't think that there's a significant difference in terms of where I grade the talent levels of Berger, Zalatoris, and Cam Smith at this point, that I'll probably end up playing Smith and Zalatoris and not Berger. Can't play them all.
You certainly cannot play them all. I am likely more bullish on Daniel Berger than you and probably most. I talk all the time about the blueprint for winning. Daniel Berger lays the blueprint often. He's gaining strokes on approach in 7 consecutive events. And you start to look at what he has to do. Like to reach the ceiling, what does Daniel Berger have to do? A lot of guys have to do crazy stuff. They have to gain 5 strokes putting, or they've got to start chipping in a lot, things like that. Daniel Berger doesn't have to do all that much because he's so strong in all of the categories. So you look at what he did last week, gains 2 strokes putting over the course of the week. That's worth a 3rd place finish. When he won at Pebble, he gained 2.5 strokes over the course of a week. I mean, we've seen him do this before. He finished runner-up at the WGC FedEx St. Jude, gained a stroke and a half putting. He just doesn't need to do all that much. So I think it's a pretty reasonable request for Berger to flash the floor, which I think he has a pretty good one. And then if he can gain seemingly 2 or 3 strokes putting, he's going to contend.
So let's take a quick scan at the ownership percentages on these guys. Berger's pushing 20%. Zalatoris is pushing 10%. Cam Smith around 12%. And then next at $8,600, Finau right now might not crack double digits for the, I don't know, first time that I can remember on DraftKings. And I like this course for Tony Finau a lot. And if it came down to, let's say it was just a 1v1 Berger versus Finau, I think they're still pretty similar. Berger, I agree, is playing much better, might be the better player overall. But with the way this is set up, it's just weird that everyone's off Finau.
I think on paper, Finau looks really good, and I don't disagree with you. My concern is what he's done off the tee recently. So he started to turn it around a bit at the Wells Fargo Championship. He was a small winner, but he still missed the cut. But he lost strokes off the tee at the Masters, the Valero, Texas Open, the rounds that we have from the match play, which of course is wonky data, and you can take it for what it's worth. But I always worry when guys seem to struggle with one of their best weapons, and I'm worried that that's what Finau's doing right now. And then you always have the question of is he going to make enough putts? But if he can figure that out on paper, I think this is a pretty good setup for him.
All right, well, you kind of talked me out of Tony Finau now. Thanks, Rick. He's definitely going to win now. Scotty Scheffler, I found in the betting market, seemed incredibly overpriced in the mid-30s versus some of his... Like, you can get Will Zalatoris at 65 to 1 in the betting market and Scheffler at like 35 to 1 in the betting market. Yet Will Zalatoris is more expensive than Scotty Scheffler. The DraftKings pricing is far more reasonable. I just don't really have a take on... This is one of the guys where I look at him, I'm like, I can see it. Probably not going to win, though.
Yeah, I think we go through stretches, especially with these young guys, not knowing what they are, where we get, Zalatoris is hot for 6 weeks at a time, and then Wolf gets hot for 6 weeks at a time, and then we're on Scotty Scheffler. It feels like we're on Scotty Scheffler right now. What he's doing with the driver is great. You always love to see it. And then the rest of his game is much more of a question mark. The putter is not good. He's lost in 3 of his last 4 with the flat stick, and some of them have been really ugly. I think it is, now he finished 4, I believe it was T4 last year at the PGA Championship, which is his best major championship. So he certainly has, I don't want to call it the pedigree, but like the ability to contend in some of these big events. But I will probably be taking a pass here just because I like other guys better.
Yeah, I like other guys better too. And I think that's going to be a similar feeling that a lot of people have. So expect some low ownership on Scheffler. Matthew Fitzpatrick is $8,400. Everything checks out except the irons. The irons are like legit bad now.
I'm happy that he missed the cut last week because I think I can get back. I think I can get back in on him this week because I mean the results, right? I mean, he's been piling up top 10 finishes. He's been gaining a ton of strokes. Now he does it via the short game, which is always a little bit scary. His weakness, as you mentioned, are the irons, and being able to hit enough greens to be able to gain strokes there, that would worry me. So that's the path for Matthew Fitzpatrick. If he can fix the irons, fix the wedges, or at least hit them okay, I think he can contend. I'm not sure he can win, Pat. I'm not ready to declare that yet, but we have seen when weeks go well for him, it's generally a top 10 week.
So this entire range, I think, is just so interesting because you'll probably need one of these guys on your roster to win the $1 million because it feels like one of them is going to spike. So could it be Scheffler? Could it be Fitzpatrick? I mean, he definitely hits enough fairways. Then you get to Sungjae. And anyone who's been using Sungjae can tell you, it's like, oh, it's going great. It's going great. Oh, no, it is going horribly wrong all of a sudden. Like, instantaneously going bad. He went from, like, 3rd in the tournament to 156th, like that. But skill-wise, and Rosin and I did talk about this, is he's good in a sense that if he ever got all 4 facets of his game on the same page in the right week, he is going to be devastating at one of these tournaments. And just all the interest is gone in him. He's like 80 to 1 in the betting market. No one wants to play him on DraftKings, but he has enough of the right skills to do really well here. Like Fitzpatrick. I mean, Sungjae's ranked 4th off the tee over the past 24 rounds. He's 8th in fairways gained. He's not going to get himself into trouble unless he starts pulling his irons.
Yeah, you nailed it. I'm worried about Sungjae. I'm a huge Sungjae believer, but what I've seen from him in the last 8 or 10 starts is certainly worrisome. You look at his driving numbers; they're not nearly as good as they were from the start of 2021. To call it the match play, his approach numbers are even worse. He's losing strokes, I believe, by quick count, 7 of the last 10 events. The putter always scorching hot, but 2 events in a row, he's lost a stroke there. I'm just worried. I think a lot of things have to go right. I think he's got to make sure he continue hitting the driver well. He's got to hit his irons much better, and we can't lose strokes putting when you're Sungjae Im. That's not the recipe for success. So you're starting to ask him to do more than one thing, more than 2 things. I'm worrying that his path to success is getting more and more narrow.
But doesn't it feel like one of these guys who have all of the pieces just aren't close to it right now? One of these guys is going to put it all together, and you just have to pray you have the right one.
Sure, we can play the golf happens, the golf happens card. Weird things happen. Hey, if you've ever watched golf, weird things happen. It's why you probably shouldn't take Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon victory laps because crazy stuff happens out there. So yeah, I mean, we've seen it. Justin Rose did it at the Masters for the first round where everything just clicked and he barnstormed the field. Now he couldn't hold on for 3 final rounds, but we see this a lot. Guys just something goes right. They get they adjust the loft a little bit. They have a new swing thought, and we're never going to know about it. So maybe praying, Pat, is the way to go on if you have the right guy or not.
So of this range, the 2 guys that interest me the most of taking that gamble on them, one, $8,200, Big Tommy Fleetwood. The buzz is over for Tommy. He's old news now. Everyone's moved on to new British players that they want. But I've been encouraged by his game essentially since the 2nd round at the Heritage, where it did seem like he figured something out. And if this does become a windy scramble fest, guy can scramble.
Certainly hasn't lost strokes tee to green since the RSM Classic. Those were his PGA Tour events. Obviously, he's played on the European Tour as well, and generally, he has more success on the Euro Tour than he does over here. But I think it is worth noting this is truly a links style course. It is designed of courses that are from Scotland and Ireland, and using kind of the coastal winds and raised fairways to mess with golfers' depth perceptions, and then give them this links style layout. And certainly, some of the Euro guys who are more seasoned in that style of play, if you are missing greens, you might see a lot of Texas wedges pulled. I mean, I think it's just a slightly different style of golf than what we are used to seeing here on the PGA Tour, and giving a nod to Tommy Fleetwood and some of these other Euro guys as we get further down the board, I think is certainly warranted.
Yeah, like, do you think that you could build if you were playing 10 lineups, you could just build an entire player pool of Euros and internationals?
For sure. Yeah. And you'd probably be unique. You'd probably have a lot of leverage on the field, and they might wait. And then you kind of hope the wind just starts kicking, right? I mean, the forecast looks pretty clean so far, but we know how quickly that can change. And then you hope it's 18 miles an hour from one direction, then it swirls, and these guys can go out there and hit their little bump and runs and not try to fly the ball to the hole like the Americans do, and kind of tap into that style.
Well, let me read this leaderboard to you, and let me see what you think here. The winner was Molinari at -8. He won by 2 over Kisner, Rory, Rose, and Xander. Then you had Eddie Pepperell, Tiger, Finau, Kuchar, and Spieth. Doesn't that sound like a leaderboard that could happen this week?
Yeah, it kind of does, right? I mean, the mix of Euro guys popping off, and then a couple of big name Americans, and yeah, it does.
Yeah, so that's Karnowski in 2018. I'm just trying to find, like, just in my mind, I'm trying to visualize what I think this leaderboard is going to look like, and then try to reverse engineer it of where I can find these guys. And that leads me to Justin Rose. He was top 10 here last time. And the ball striking has been pretty good. Like, the ball striking was bad because he hurt his back at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, where he was in contention that week until he dumped 3 in the water and had to withdraw because he couldn't walk. Then he didn't play the Players. Played well at the Masters. At the Valspar, driving good, irons good, couldn't chip or putt. But that's not something the putting is kind of neither here nor there with Justin Rose. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. The short game stuff, and you kind of hit on it, the Texas wedge style player where, maybe he's not putting from off the greens, but he probably doesn't have a wedge in his hand either. He probably has like a hybrid of some sort, and he's good at that.
He is good at that. It's certainly getting better. I'm probably not as optimistic on Justin Rose. I think that the one round that he played at the Masters, I think carries a lot of weight for people, especially in their memory banks, where it was a historic round. He lapped the field that day, where scoring conditions were much more difficult than what Justin Rose did. And then, of course, I think he might have stayed on that exact number, 7 under, for the rest of the week. He finished 7th. But I will say he has not been as bad as the stretch of golf after when the PGA Tour returned, and then into the end of 2020, he looks lost in those moments. And we're starting to see gains again. He's gained strokes on approach in 4 of 5. And then, of course, he had a pretty decent week with Henrik Stenson in the Zurich Classic, which we know, especially in the alternate shot format, both guys have to be on. You can't have a weak part of your game when you're playing the same ball. And for them to finish 11th, I think is certainly encouraging, gives each one of them just a hair more of a boost.
All right, so then we continue to drop down the list of the pricing, bringing us to Louis Oosthuizen. He's hitting his irons well. He's putting well. He's chipping well. He's driving well. This terrifies me because I kind of want to play him, but I know not to play Louis.
Why not? I like Louis. Louis, he doesn't play often, but when he does, he plays well. And the way he does it is via the short game. And he's basically, a 0 off the tee, a 0 on approach. If you go back, I'm going back like a year or 2 at this point. Maybe that's too long. But, again, this could be an Open Championship, or at least play similarly, or maybe not play similarly, but give you the option. We go to a lot of courses that don't even give you the option. A course like this, if you want to flop it, go flop it. If you want to take out a hybrid, take a hybrid. You want to take an 8-iron, bounce it into the hill, do it. Like it's going to give these guys options, which I think opens up the scope of the type of golfers that can find success, because there's going to be like 5 or 6 different ways to win this golf tournament.
I think so too. The biggest red flag for me with Louis is the ownership percentage next to his name. Play Louis when no one plays him. Don't play Louis when everyone plays him. That's like the rule of thumb with him. That's fair.
So is he going to be popular this week?
It looks like he's trending towards being pretty popular right now. I got him in the double digits, him and Hatton, who is the next guy on the list at $8,000. I thought they would both come in lower owned, and it seems like they are the popular, no one's going to own these guys. I'm going to jump on them.
Interesting. Yeah, I would keep an eye on that as the week goes along, because the rule of thumb with Louis is certainly correct.
What do you do with Hatton?
I'm a pretty big believer in Hatton. I think by design he is a very volatile golfer, and sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. He is like 75% of Bryson, and I don't mean in the way he hits the ball or anything like that. I'm just talking about the volatility of his results. And I think that if he is your golfer that you're understanding has a ton of upside and a ton of miscut equity, he's one of the better guys here, because there's not many guys around the world who have won as often as Hatton does. He's done it on difficult golf tournaments at times. I think if we're going to get a link style course, you got to give him a little bit of a bump. So I'm probably usually more bullish on Hatton than most.
So that leaves us between the two chalky guys. You have Berger, who's chalky at his price point. That leaves you with Finau, Scheffler, Fitzpatrick, Im, Fleetwood, Rose, Louis, and Hatton, before we're bookended with the next very popular player in the DraftKings pricing. If there was one guy of those, who do you think would be your lean? Because I'm looking at Fleetwood or Hatton, I think, as my one guy from here.
Yeah, I'd probably prefer Hatton. I believe he's not only the cheapest of those, or at least tied with Louis at $8,000, but I just really want upside, right? I'm not talking about head-to-heads. I'm not talking about whatever. I want to win the $1 million, and I think Hatton gives me a better opportunity than most to win me $1 million.
This one makes me really sad, because I love the Mexican Allen Iverson. He is the answer, but he's going to be like 25% owned this week at $7,900. And there's a couple of very popular options in this high $7,000 range that I'm good with playing. None of them. I know that's going to come back and bite me in the ass, but all of the guys, and you talk about sandwich pricing all the time, there are great players no one is even thinking about, because everyone wants to play Abraham Ancer, Corey Connors, and Sam Burns.
Yeah, and I know the guys in between those guys that you just mentioned that I'm also excited about. So this is where we start to get the idea that the pricing came out early, as it always does, and then the major pricing is always generally much softer than usual, that this is where we start to form really, really chalky guys. And I mentioned it earlier. I think I'd rather eat the chalk at the top of the board than not. We've got a couple of names coming up I'm super excited about that I know are coming in at lower ownership than what Ancer and Connors and Sam Burns is going to. But it is not a knock on the way that Ancer has been playing. It is a game theory situation. And if he just finishes T29, like I've gotten not that much out of him, I'm not too worried about it.
No, he's $7,900. I ran my key stats, which you can go back to on Sunday's show, and I walk through Fantasy National and show you how I've highlighted all this. Once again, fantasynational.com/Mayo for 20% off. He rates out fourth by the numbers. Like, he's been really great. He plays Pete Dye course as well. It's really tough to come up with an argument against Abraham Ancer. The path would be he's not a great putter. He puts himself out of the tournament, and this field is just too good for him. I don't even believe that's going to happen, but I have to pray that's going to happen, because I'm not going to play him, because, like, here's another one. Adam Scott, $7,900. He falls into the Scheffler camp for me, is that I just have no opinion about Adam Scott right now, so I'm not going to play him.
I agree. We haven't seen him play as much, especially since the return of golf. When he has, it's been fine. Like I'm not sprinting to the window to get exposure to Adam Scott. I think that people want to remember the better versions of Adam Scott. You know, he lost 7.5 strokes on approach at the Masters. That is not official data, but certainly one that I stand behind with the shot level stuff. And just to start before that, he gained 7 on approach. I think he's much more volatile now than he's ever been. He lost 5 strokes off the tee at both the Workday and the Players Championship. He is not, while the swing still looks good, Pat, it is not producing the same results as I think people want to remember about Adam Scott.
Adam Scott right now, currently projected at 4.5% ownership in the DraftKings Millionaire Maker. We'll see if he's a guy who gets some buzz as the week goes along, because the guy I actually prefer that I am probably going to bet and play from this area, sneaky resurgence in the irons, the chipping, the putting can come along, and the conditions can get bad. Give me all the Shane Lowry at $7,800.
I knew it. So I am not a Shane Lowry guy. Let me start there. I have probably not bet him much. I've not rostered him much since he won the Open Championship like 2 years ago. This is the metrics are very much in his favor right now. He is gaining strokes on approach in 6 straight. The ball striking's been awesome. We know the short game that he has. We watched him do it at that Open Championship. Like this is, to me, probably the perfect spot to deploy Shane Lowry. And he's starting to see good results, right? Top 10 at the Players, top 10 at the RBC Heritage. This feels really good coming from a guy who is not a Lowry supporter.
No, and what do those two courses, despite being very short, what do those two top 10s have in common?
Pete
Dye courses. And when you look at his wins, both the Open Championship, Bridgestone, even overseas in the race to Dubai, where he beat Brooks and Dustin and Fleetwood that year, they're all really long courses.
Yeah, he can certainly hold his own, and especially because he can get the putter going at times. And he's one of these bulldogs, right? He's a competitor. He's not going to roll over for this field. And if he wants to play a more traditional link style course, I think this is going to be visually very appealing for him.
I really want to play Joaquin Niemann. Just no one else is playing him. I love Niemann. I think he's a better player than all of these chalky guys that we talked about when we think about where they're going in their career. I think Niemann is closer to Hovland than he is to Corey Connors, put it that way. And maybe I'm just way off on that. Maybe I've overestimated how good Niemann is. But if we're talking about at this point of his career, if we're going to be talking that around the green and scrambling is imperative this week, I have bet on Niemann twice in the past 2 months, and he has chipped himself out of both tournaments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know which tournaments that you bet him at, but he lost 5 strokes around the green at Honda.
And then Wells Fargo.
And then Wells Fargo, he loses 3 strokes there. The good news is there are weeks that he gains, right? He gained nearly 2 at the Valspar. He gained over 2 at both the Genesis and the Workday, which is at least somewhat encouraging. I'm trying to get there on Niemann. Do you worry about like his major championship pedigree? Because I think he's played 8 of them, and I think he's missed the cut 5 times, and he doesn't have a top 20, or don't we care about that?
I don't really care about that, especially at this price point. It was just like Patrick Reed can never win a major. He's never had a top 10, and then he wins the Masters.
Until you do.
Yeah. Like
you're bad until you're not.
Yeah. And I think that we forget how young Niemann is. And I bet him to win the Open Championship before the year at 150 to 1. And one of the reasons for that was he's a really good win player. He keeps the ball low. He hits a lot of these punch shots. So this could be a really good course for him. I wanted him at a link style course. It's just now that we're here, I'm getting gun shy.
Yeah. I think I can talk myself into him. I mean, he is really, you're right. Still young, still very raw, but the upside is spectacular. He might chip himself out of this. But okay, I'm growing more optimistic on getting exposure to Niemann this week. He's really good. The metrics are, by all accounts, very strong as well.
Jason Day is next at $7,700. Can we just go full pass?
Yeah. I mean, he literally doesn't even look like himself. And I'm not even talking about his golf game. And he also doesn't look like himself. He's a shell of his old game. Yeah. I can't find a reason.
I mean, he looks like JJ Spawn. Maybe JJ Spawn stole his game to become first round leader last week.
That is the most reasonable explanation of what is happening with Jason Day.
That JJ Spawn is actually Shang Tsung, and he has stolen the powers of Jason Day. Easy to do. Go download the new Mortal Kombat movie, by the way. I quite enjoyed it as a good romp. Paul Casey, he's next. I'm playing Paul Casey. I bet Paul Casey. How badly does this turn out for me?
Hopefully not that bad, because I think Casey is very interesting, especially because he is very similar to Corey Connors, who I'm sure is going to be very popular, and we're going to talk about in just a second. But since the start of 2021, I mean, you look at just strokes gained total, Paul Casey's like 8th. He's been even better on approach, and he's won this year. He won on the European Tour. That's not included in his strokes gained data. So I think that Casey is probably actually been better this year than most people want to expect. And if he's going to fall into kind of this crossfire range of Corey Connors, who's going to eat up all the ownership, then Paul Casey at 7,700, certainly needing to be able to rely on the putter, is appealing.
Paul Casey is still going to generate a lot of ownership. It looks like it's going to be slightly less than Connors and Ancer, and we'll see what happens when we get to, there's some other 7K guys, and obviously you can't play them all, but you especially don't want to play all of the very most popular ones, especially when we talk about these talented players that are in between. Like, even if it is someone like Lowry or Niemann, or maybe you don't like them and you're like, oh, you know what? I do like Adam Scott. Well, no one's using Adam Scott. And does Paul Casey beat Adam Scott 10 times out of 11 tries? Probably not. So you do have to kind of pick and choose here. I'm picking Paul Casey as the chalky guy that I'm going with. So he's at 77. Then you got Sergio at 76. I'm just not going to let Sergio hurt me. I'm not playing him. I can't do it.
Yeah, that's fair. I can't watch the putter. He's one of these guys that I mentioned earlier where he's just a constant loser and you have no idea when he's going to gain. And if he does gain, he'll win the Sanderson Farms or whatever. But the game has not been nearly as sharp recently. I want to say since the match play where he had that deep run there. I'll just take a pass on Sergio as well.
Leishman's next, noted win player. He's an Aussie. That's always nice. Coming off a win at the team event. Always nice to see. He was Cuss' third pick to win this. I think there's going to be a lot of buzz behind Leishman this week. I think on paper this sets up really well for him, but I just worry that he sucks off the tee.
Yeah, he does. And I think the support is warranted, right? I mean, it's not only the win at the Zurich, it's the 5th place finish at the Masters where he was unbelievable in ball striking. It's also kind of comparing it back to what he was doing at the end of 2020, where he was literally one of the worst players on the PGA Tour when we got towards like the Tour Championship and things like that. But he's been much better since the results are starting to pour in, and he finished 21st last week. But I would argue, I mean, it was kind of better than that. He relied on the flat stick a little bit more than I would have liked, but he was in contention for a long time last week, and he ends up finishing 21st. I think this is warranted for Leishman's popularity this week.
Corey Connors, $7,600. What's the case against Connors? That he'll chip and putt his way out of it and maybe miss the cut?
And he's going to be incredibly popular. I mean, I'm not even that worried about Connor's short game. So since the start of 2021, it's been bad, but he's lost less than a quarter of a stroke around the greens, and he's been a 0 putter. If that continues, that's the recipe. Now, the ball striking is fun. I don't think people realize how good he is off the tee. You know, if you look at last, depending on how you split it up, 24, 36 rounds, even more recent, he's really only second to like Bryson in a lot of these off the tee categories. Obviously, there's a big gap there, but he's really, really good off the tee. So the argument is, yeah, maybe he chips himself out of it. I'm not as worried about that. The argument is he's going to be the most popular golfer in this range.
And that's tough for me to deal with. I think if you're playing cash games, 3 max, you go for it. If you're playing the Millionaire Maker, fade him and just pray he's bad. But when was the last time he was bad?
Not this year.
No, he's been great.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal.
If this putting is real, and he's been putting really well, he's going to have his bad rounds, but I think he gained in like 5 straight tournaments. I don't think it's crazy to say with his ball striking acumen that he's a top 10 player in the world if he was someone who just gains putting.
Yeah, that is probably true, right? We talk about that with Morikawa all the time. He's not as good on approach as Morikawa, but he's better off the tee. That's if we say it about him, we have to say it about Connors. That's fair.
It'd be so. I can't wrap my mind around him being that good. I don't understand it.
Yeah. And again, it's a series, I don't know, 12 events or something like that. So maybe this is just, he's found it and we'll see in a year if he's actually a top 10 player in the world. But the metrics and the ones that usually align with elite players, they show up when you look at Corey Connors.
Gary Woodland at $7,500. Yay or nay?
Nay.
Nay for me too. Okay, that was easy. Bubba Watson, big yay for me. Here we go.
More yay than nay for sure. I think the off the tee stuff has been back. We know that he played well enough at the Zurich Classic to earn a top 10 there. He's gained a ton of strokes off the tee. If you want to know any inside information, he just won the member guest or the member with Jay Monahan as his partner, the commish, down at some course in Florida. So game obviously in great form, Pat. But I'm pretty optimistic about the putter.
Yes.
2 straight events he's gained 2.5 strokes or more with the flat stick. And if he gets anywhere close to that, he is very, very interesting.
5 of his 12 wins have come at Pete Dye courses. He lost in a playoff at Whistling Straits in a major. He was T11 in 2012 at this course. I don't know, was he T11, T13, whatever it was. He was inside the top 15 at this course. He was T21 at Whistling Straits again in 2015. Like you said, the putter is not a disaster anymore. He's gaining strokes putting all of a sudden. Maybe that reverts back. I think the ability to not necessarily have to chip from greenside, he can putt, he can do whatever he wants. I think that's a benefit to someone like Bubba Watson. And the biggest thing with me is the driving is back to that peak level, but it's his accuracy, which kind of blows my mind, is that he is beating the field in driving accuracy most weeks, which if he does that here, he's going to be very much in contention, as long as he doesn't do what he did on the final 2 holes at Wells Fargo and play 2 holes in 12 strokes.
Russell Westbrook, he triple double. Yeah, that was costly for me. I mean, more costly for him, granted, but that was that's the concern with Bubba is he is one shot away from saying, I think I'm done here. Let me go. Let me just hack this around for the next couple of holes. But when he is engaged, and I think we've talked about this before, when he is engaged, he's one of the best guys out there, and it's showing up in his results right now.
Here's something interesting. I'm looking at the 2015 World Golf Championship, HSBC Championships in China. Are those Paspalum greens?
I can find out for you. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not up to date on my latest.
I tried looking for it and I couldn't find it. But now that I kind of just look at this leaderboard, it's really interesting. Bubba won that year at the WGC. Tim Clark was second. Graham McDowell was third. Those are three guys who were basically top 11 at this in 2012 as well. Martin Keimer is up there, someone who is very good at courses where there's no rough around the greens and he can putt from off the greens. Ian Poulter, Mark Leishman, Brant Snedeker, Adam Scott, who also had a nice run in 2012 at this event. This leaderboard's kind of similar to the one that we saw in 2012, just no Rory, because I just assume Rory didn't play, which he did not.
Let's see. If there's any place that I have the data, it is here, and I don't think I have the green types. No, I do not. But yeah, no, that is a leaderboard that I think could kind of show flashes to what we're seeing this week. That's a course that I think it's kind of awkward to compare it directly to the Ocean course here, but that's an interesting little pool. I like that.
All right. Last one I want to go through before we just start rapid firing, guys.
Okay.
Sam Burns is $7,500. In the betting market, he is half the price of like legit good players. He's like 50 to 1 to win this tournament. Is he actually going to be popular, or is he the player that everyone is going to talk themselves out of by the time lock actually comes along?
If there's anyone who's going to be that guy, it would be Sam Burns, because pricing came out so early that we missed the runner-up finish that probably should have been a win at the Byron Nelson. I hope that is the case, because there are few golfers who are playing as well as Sam Burns have since the start of the 2021 season. That goes back to the fall. And in the fall and into the start of early 2021, we were like, wow, Sam Burns is having two ceiling weeks every single week, or two ceiling rounds every single week, excuse me. But he's been horrible in the other two. And then it turned into like three ceiling weeks and three ceiling rounds and one horrible round. And now it's like, wow, he's cleaned up the horrible rounds and he's contending and he's winning golf tournaments. So I think that, I mean, I would love it if that's the case, because there's really no knock against Sam Burns, especially for the price. He is the real deal. He's awesome off the tee. He's great on approach. His short game leaves a little to be desired, but he has legitimate upside in a lot of different events.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there with Sam Burns. When I was all over Sam Burns and he kept costing me wins, I jumped off Sam Burns. All of a sudden, he's first and second every single week now. So it's really difficult for me to try to parse that through, because the guy that I really want to play is the next guy, and it's Matt Wallace. I bet him to win. When we talk about tee to green, he's been excellent in the long courses. They don't bother me. Just make a few putts, Matt. You're going to be good to go.
Yeah, anytime a guy whips out that two thumb putting grip or something like that, it's maybe not the most confident putting stroke, but from tee to green, he's been phenomenal. If you want to give him the Euro boost for the link style courses, certainly not going to knock you there. And his short gamer is around the green play, probably more specifically, has been better. It really is that putter. It's is he going to make enough putts, or is he going to put himself out of it?
I'm playing him. I bet him to win at 125 to 1. I love him at this price at $7,400. So Matt Wallace, I'm all in on this week. Keegan is $7,300, one of the most popular plays of the week. And let me just jump over to the model here and see how Keegan rates out. Oh, first. Great.
Yeah, because he's fixed the putter. So let's see, 2, 4, 7 weeks, he's gained strokes in 5 of them. Oh, actually 5 out of 6 measured events. And then he finished 4th at the Zurich. That's an unmeasured event where he probably putted well there with Brendan Steele. So this is what we've been asking him to do for a long time. And he's not gaining a ton of strokes on the greens, but he's not hemorrhaging 4 or 5 a week. I get the reason why he would be number one. The putter has been fixed seemingly. And if that's the case, watch out, because tee to green is special.
Hofman is there as well. Would you rather play Keegan or Hofman, who's doing almost as well as Keegan?
Yeah, Hoffman's ball striking's been just as good going back to the start of 2021. If he's going to come in at a fraction of the ownership of Keegan Bradley, I would certainly be happy to pivot to Charlie Hoffman. I don't think people realize, and neither of these guys have a trophy on the mantle to show for their hard work this year, but both of them have been really, really good. And if one of them comes in at half the ownership, give me that guy.
How about this? Does this surprise you? $7,300. The lowest owned guy in this range besides Horschel and Henley is Max Homa.
Yes, because, well, yes and no. Yes, because he's a very popular guy and people like to play him. But you just mentioned the Hoffman, the Keegan Bradley, some of these other guys in this range are names that people know as well. This is it's an interesting spot. You know, a pretty ugly miscut for Homa at the Wells Fargo Championship, and where he just absolutely bled strokes around the green. That's my concern. He has not been good in his last 6 or 7 starts around the greens. And I wonder if that is going to punish him this week, but he's shown that he can contend obviously on difficult golf courses. His ball striking has been much better. I worry about his short game.
The rest of the $7,000 level, I'm going to nominate one, you nominated another, and we can talk about the rest of the guys we actually do want to talk about. If we don't talk about them, you can just assume that we have no interest in playing them this week. Number one,
Fair.
Obviously, WOOO Kim is going to hit the radar for me. It's a Pete Dye course. It's a major. And I think it's just a running joke because I love Siwoo Kim so much, but he's actually been really good this year.
Yeah, so there's a couple of guys that we've talked about that I'm not generally a fan of, but it's starting to look good. And Siwoo is certainly one of those guys. You throw in the fact that this is a Pete Dye course, and he's had great success on those. But he's been filling it up. I mean, the irons have been just scorching hot. So I certainly am not. I'm not biased in this situation, so I can certainly endorse Siwoo as things going in the right direction.
So who would you like to talk about from the rest of the sevens?
Man, I think Brian Harman is interesting. I'm not sprinting there, but the short game stuff is special. We've seen his ability to get hot when he just buzzsawed Bubba Watson at the match play. His off the tee game is, while he's not long, he gains strokes, or at least he's near zero, which I think is all you can ask. And then the irons can get him into trouble, Pat. Sometimes he's good, sometimes he's bad. When he's good, he's going to get a good result. But the short game is magnificent. So that's probably the guy from that range that, if things align for him, the stars align for him in the week, you could, see him inside the top 10.
$7,000. Pete Dye course, check. Coastal course, check. Big payday, check. Recent form, check. Fairways, check. Long iron proximity on the rise, so a check to that too. Is Kuchar back?
Okay, I was wondering who. I didn't know if you were going with Kuchar or Kisner, and you said recent form, and I was like, it can't be Kisner, so it might be Kuchar. So this is interesting. There was a time where I thought he was running well above expectation for being one of the shorter hitters out there. He had actually described in an interview a couple of weeks ago that I can't exactly remember what he said, but he's like, I found something. We figured out like a little quirk. I don't know if it was his grip or whatever. But when I hear guys say that, I usually run to the stats to try to figure out if it's real or not, because these players, they can think one thing, whether it's actually happening or not can be different. And it looks good. He has been much better off the tee. He was bleeding strokes off the tee for basically a year. Approach is looking a lot better. He's always been a good putter. And now we get to a place that should, look more reminiscent to some of these great courses down in like Sea Island that he's had a lot of success on. This is certainly, if you're ever going to play Matt Kuchar, I believe one of the better spots to do so.
Especially with everyone off of him is what you rarely see at a major on DraftKings.
Yeah.
The cheapest price he's been.
Yeah, we used to just plug and play Matt Kuchar every single major. He'd be like 7,500. We plug him into every single lineup for 3 years, and it usually worked out.
Any other of the 7K guys? Because Robert Macintyre is the only other one that I like that I'm going to play.
I think that's fair. There is also, if you believe the Paz Palom thing, which Paz Palom, if you don't know, it's a little bit of a larger blade of grass. It usually makes bad putters better. It usually doesn't exaggerate things. So Emiliano Grillo is here. He's played well on Paz Palom greens in the past, but that's I'm not, again, super stoked about it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see. I got to give a special shout out to my guy, Garrick Higo, who won himself into this tournament. Cashed me a nice little payday over in the Canary Islands.
Right?
I just wish he was $6,400. I just don't understand his price point at $7,400. He should be $1,000 cheaper.
Yeah, and there is a guy at 64 or 63 that just doesn't have the wins, but he has the European Tour recent form that we'll get to. But Higo, I think Higo won twice. Did he win back-to-back weeks or 2 out of 3?
He won once, and then he came like second, and then he came like fifth at another one or something.
Okay, got it. I thought he won twice, but yeah, played himself in. He's playing well. He bombs it too.
Does he bomb it?
I'm pretty sure he bombs it.
I was just so impressed. He's a lefty, for one thing. I was just so impressed with his short game and his putting. Like, he was so on his win. And granted, it was basically like the first Canary Islands tournament was essentially like we saw at the Byron Nelson last week, where you just had to go out and make as many birdies as possible to try to win. But like getting it up and down for par, coming down the stretch, trying to get his third European Tour win in 2 years, just nails from like 7 feet every single time, walking him in. Like he got into a good groove. Like Seabez is very much the same way. I think Higo seems like his upside is a bit higher. I'm so flummoxed by this price point. Like same as Aaron Wise's price point. Another guy who plays really well at coastal courses, playing really well right now. Like $7,200. It seems too high.
It does. To put a bow on Higo, so these are European Tour stats. So he's 16th in distance, 116th in accuracy. So Higo, kind of one of those bomber type players, although he is getting a hair. No, he's not. I thought he was getting more accurate from year to year. He is not, but he is certainly a long hitter.
All right, let's jump into the sixes. Who you want to talk about?
I think we have to talk about Ryan Palmer, right? I mean, this is a guy who at $9,100 last week is probably one of the bigger price decreases that we've seen, and he didn't crack the top 40 last week. So I think that if you played him, you certainly did not get what you expected. And now he goes back to being what is essentially the most valuable fantasy golfer that we have. I was running the numbers. I have a tool on rickrungood.com, and it's like, hey, who just based on price, who's been the most valuable? I think I did the last 12 or 18 months, and Ryan Palmer's name shows up a lot. He just rarely kills you. He might not win a golf tournament. There's seemingly better spots for him, but $6,900 as we start to embark on some of the more questionable, unknown European Tour players, I think is worth consideration.
In that pricing tool that you just talked about at rickrungood.com, is Lanto up there as well? Because he kind of got his game back together at Wells Fargo, and now he's at the magical price point of below $7,000 again.
Yeah, this is the tool that how I found out Lanto just absolutely smokes everybody when he's under $7,000, or at least he returns, 10, 11, 12 times value. So when Lanto is in this price range, as he's starting again, he went through a little bit of a rough stretch for the last month or so, but as he's starting to turn the game around, he's one of these guys that you see that price tag and you wonder, okay, if he goes out and he scores me 70 DraftKings points. I know we don't often talk about the raw point totals. Like that would be certainly worth it. He might be able to unlock some different ways to get to what will be the optimal lineup.
The guy that I really wanted to bring up was Thomas Pieters, who gained a ton on his approaches. He's never a good putter, but I just like him at longer courses. He's a very good around the green player. Like I said, not the best putter in the world, but he hits it a ton. He hits his irons really well. He's pretty accurate off the tee, which I was kind of surprised about. But if he can just putt around even, maybe it ends up being like we saw at the U.S. Open last year, where he's up there, then he has one terrible round and he's out of it. But I think he can do a ton of DraftKings scoring at $6,800.
Yeah, he's super. I don't know why I keep saying he's like a young raw talent. He's been around for a long time, but he's just like so talented. You see him rack up DraftKings points. He makes a lot of birdies. He's going to give a lot back with bogeys, but sometimes that's okay. The flat stick to me, as you mentioned, Pat, it's always the concern. He lost strokes putting last week, but he hit the ball okay. Otherwise, it's certainly an appealing price tag. I think there's a couple of other guys, or at least one in particular, as we get further down, I might be interested in. But Pieters, I don't know what his ownership's going to come in at. Probably single digits, right? I mean, he's not going to be that popular after last week.
Oh, I highly doubt it. I'm seeing him in the single digits right now, like the mid to low single digits. Who is the guy? I'm very curious about this guy that you're talking about.
Okay, it's Dean Burmeister. So Dean Burmeister is. Do you know him? You know this guy? You like this guy?
You mean the Mista lady? Get him out of here.
Well, here's what we've got. We've got a South African who plays on the European Tour. I believe I think this is his first PGA Tour start since the US Open in 2019, which is technically also a European Tour event. But here we go. So he wins in Spain 3 weeks ago. He finished fourth at the Canary Islands 2 weeks ago. And last week he finished sixth at Danny Willett's event, the British Masters. He is now inside the top 90 in the world. You're getting a $6,300 price tag on him. And I mean, he's like a seasoned I don't know how much you want to put stock into this, a seasoned European Tour player who I believe has better upside than a lot of his peers.
Yeah. Big Dean Burmeister has sucked me in many times in the past. And it always just goes so horribly for me. Maybe I just have that baggage with me and I can't overcome that. I do think that he's a very good player. And like you mentioned, the results have been very, very good on the European Tour. The issue with the European Tour stuff right now, and once again, I highly encourage everyone to go check out European Tour picks and bets on Mayo Media Network with Sky and Tom, is that these fields just haven't been good. Like, that's why I worry about with Higo and Burmeister, is that you're not, all the top end European players are just stayed over in America. And it's not a real who's who over on the European Tour these days.
I was trying to compare what those events would be. So the event that Burmeister won, it was in Spain, the Tenerife Open, I believe is the way it is pronounced. Using the official world golf ranking, that's a 45 strength number. It's tiny. It's little. It is a little bit better than the Puerto Rico Open and the Corrales Punta Cana, but it doesn't really sniff any other PGA Tour event by a mile. So that's what we're talking about here. These are Puerto Rico Opens. These are Punta Canas. If you think that is worth it, if you think that is valuable, if you think it is helpful, it is what it is.
Like Smooja's playing really well on the European Tour. Sami Välimäki, the Finnish Flash, tends to play really well at really difficult courses if everything gets up. I just think that there's a lot of value in the Europeans in the $6,000 range. Like, if you wanted to build a Stars and Scrubs roster, I know that Spieth is going to be an exceptionally popular player, but if you have confidence in Peters and Burmeister, Spieth could be your second man in if you wanted.
Sure. And I think there's plenty of these European Tour guys, right? I mean, even so Catlin, missed the cut last week. He's been great on the European Tour. You could always go back to old Rasmus, but I mean, I think there are certainly viable builds where you give these guys a boost, especially compared to the idea of getting not only guys that might excel at this style of play, the link style course, but also are going to be completely unknowns to the vast majority of the player pool, and those who are going to opt for Brendan Todd instead of maybe some of these lesser known Europeans. Like, this is how you actually get leverage, like low price, low owned golfers that if they miss the cut at 1%, probably not that big of a deal. But if you miss the cut with a 20% guy down here, you're in trouble. Like, this is actual real leverage here. And if they fly up the board, if they finish inside the top 15 or something like that, you are certainly putting yourself ahead of a lot of other lineups. So this is where I would like to kind of just live in this range, right? I would prefer a more Stars and Scrubs approach.
I like Seabez a lot this week. Christian Bezuidenhout. I think he hits a lot of fairways. He putts well. He chips well. The irons can be okay. He has no distance off the tee, but he does hit fairways, which I think could be an advantage here. Good link style player as well. Grace, you can always see that, and everyone's going to use Charles. Like, I can't dispute that Charles is playing so good right now, ball striking wise, putting wise, whatever it might be. But there's no way you're talking me into a 15% Charles at $6,800 at a PGA Championship in 2021.
Right. So this would be the guy that I would avoid. This is not really the leverage spot. Yes, it saves you money, but if he does well, you're kind of behind you're everyone else has done well with you. And if he misses the cut, you would now have a $6,800 guy who missed the cut at 15%. Like, there's no leverage there. So it would be very difficult for him to find a way into my lineup this week. If he continues to play well and he uses that wonky putter and he rolls it in, we can see how it goes moving forward. But this doesn't feel like the week for it.
I think if you're just looking for single stat players and hopefully they pop in that, you mentioned Brendan Todd. If I told you that Todd just gained 0 strokes on approach this week and everything else he normally did was just to his baseline, off the tee, around the green, and in putting, but he wasn't bleeding 5 strokes with his approach, where do you think he would finish?
Well, I can tell you, I bet you he would finish. Let's see. I'm trying to look at some of his other events. I bet you he would finish 18th, just based on kind of, so 0 on approach, gain a bunch of strokes on and around the green, have an average week with the driver. I bet you finishes 18th.
I could see him doing something weird like that here. If it really comes down to and it gets tough, I know he has no distance, and I know the irons have been bad, but the wedges are still good. And that's where a lot of his third shots from the par 5s realistically are coming from anyway. It's not like he's going for it in 2. And then the short game is terrific, and the putter is great.
And then for $6,700, if you signed me up for a T18 right now, I'd probably take it. That'd be just fine.
The worst, the shitty part is like that's feels like his optimal outcome.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, it's weird because he's the last guy who won back-to-back starts. So to say that he doesn't have a lot of winning upside, I think is still remains to be true. He kind of lives in that, 18 to 35 range quite often. There's not a ton of upside past that.
No, and then we're obviously not going to talk about all 156 players, but like Stewart Cink is just one. Cameron Davis has been exceptionally popular over the past 3 months. He's kind of falling off a little bit, but everything I just said about Brendan Todd, could you make the same case for Kevin Na, but he actually has upside?
Yeah, so Kevin Na actually popped up when you start leaning on the short game stuff. Na starts to fly up the model, and it's because he's great on the short game. That's how that works. And yeah, he's actually won once every season for the last 4 seasons. He is certainly high risk. He misses a ton of cuts. He withdraws more often than most. But yes, he has way more winning upside than Brendan Todd, who's won, I don't know, twice in 6 years or whatever, 7 years, maybe longer than that. They happen to be back-to-back weeks, and Nas seems to find a way to hoist a trophy every single year.
I'm just trying to find who the highest rated player is in the $6,000 level for me. It's actually Peters, but a lot of that is using old stats because the European Tour stats and his injury time off are drawing from way back. After that, it's Stewart Cink. Like, do we just kind of roll with it?
I mean, that's probably fair, right? Considering Cink has won twice. He's longer than people want to give him credit for. He hits a ton of greens and seems to have a good thing going right now. I mean, this is since Cink won his major, this has got to be the best stretch of golf he's been in, and he's kind of defying the age a little bit. He's been really, really good.
All right. I think that's everyone, unless you had a special mention that you wanted to get out there. I'm trying to see who the most popular plays are from down here. Griot, Palmer, Charles seem to be the big 3 right now.
Cink was actually, so I was looking up who my highest ranked 6K player would have been, and with a sample size, right? Because you got to throw out some of these European guys with 2 or 4 rounds. It did end up being Cink. So that's good to see.
Maybe Adam Hadwin can be good for once. Who knows?
He's been bad for a while.
Yeah, he has been. And now he's not even in fairways anymore. So that's not great news for him. Okay, Rick, what do you got on the go this week?
Yeah, lots of stuff. Rick Run Good YouTube channel and data at rickrungood.com. Yeah, I'll be everywhere. This is a CBS event, so I'll be doing a lot of CBS Sports HQ. And what we do is always the scariest is like during the rounds, we do these live look-ins, and I've got to provide instant analysis, and that can always make you look pretty silly, Pat. So if you enjoy me looking silly, there'll be plenty of opportunities this week.
Do people get very confused about what you talk about when you're on that show? Not necessarily the people that you're on with, but the viewers, because I do the PGA Tour.com short hit. And if I mention more than 2 numbers, people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, oh yeah, people don't know this stuff who don't watch my show.
Yeah, it's a lot of questions like, who's backs against the wall, or like who has the mentality to win it. I'm like, I don't know, but like in round 4 since the start of the year, he's done X, Y, and Z. But yeah, it's a lot of just talk to the viewer, just describe what is happening, and then see, and then always, who do you think is going to win? That looks silly 5 minutes later.
Oh yeah, of course. But you need the instant analysis. The move is pick the first guy on the course, and when he's 2 under par, just take a victory lap. Be like, I touted him 750 to 1. Then don't make a mention of anything else ever again.
Smart. You figured it out.
That is the hack to golf picks on Twitter right now. Anyway, at rickrungood.com, at rickrungood on Twitter. I will see you tomorrow in the Golf Digest column that we both contribute together. So
that's right.
Do you have a lean of who you're picking to win?
So this is where I try to like if you made me pick one of the top guys, I think I'd probably have to go with Spieth right now, but I do have some ideas of going a little bit further. I don't know who you said you were going to pick to win. Cameron Smith. He's like 25 or 30 or something like that. Like
he's 45 to 1, pal.
Wow. You're going with a 45 to 1 in the Golf Digest article. That's impressive. I would not do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Listen, I don't pick. Actually, the only 2 wins I have are like 2 big wins this year, so it's really keeping me afloat in the units that get bet, assuming you put 1 unit on everything, which I would not do for a guy who's like 80 to 1 versus a guy who's 20 to 1. Like, that wouldn't be the same bet, but that's how they score it. It's fine. It makes it very easy for people to figure out when they're reading and who don't know anything about betting. Sure, make it easy enough on them. But I don't know. I pick these guys at the top. They never win. Just let me pick Cam Smith. I got a good feeling about Cam Smith. I want to pick Cam Smith.
Then pick him. Yeah, I agree. I'm probably going about it the wrong way. I usually take one of the top 6 guys, go there, and then if I like somebody down further, I put him in as the long shot. But I appreciate that. Go get your man. If you think he's going to win the golf tournament, write him up. I love it.
Last bit that I totally forgot about, but I wanted to do this because I've done this on the 2 other shows. So I did a first look show earlier this week when the pricing dropped like the first hour, and I made a lineup, and I call it the good plays lineup. What almost the consensus agrees are the good plays of the week, and try to jam in those. It generally turns out to be the chalkiest lineup of all, but I think it's a good exercise to go through. Then on Saturday, when Raza and I recorded, we built another play the best plays lineup. So I want to do that with you before we get out of here and have the third iteration of the play the best plays lineup. If we were to play the best plays this week, don't worry about ownership, just the guys that you look at and be like, oh, they're a good play. Let's play them. Who ends up in that lineup?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I'm not going to do the math on the fly, so you might have to help me with this. But
I will punch it in. Like we'll try to nominate the guys. Are Hovland and Spieth the 2 plays at the top?
Yes, they are.
So
Spieth and Hovland, first 2 men in.
Spieth and Hovland are going in. That leaves us with $7,600 remaining. So
all right,
Burns
has to be it. Because he's what people would say is the free space. So that's 75.
I think in that range you have like Hofman, Keegan, Burns, Casey, Connors, and Ancer. They're the ones everyone's gravitating towards.
We could do. I mean, if you want to play the best plays, there is. So Sam Burns has been better for 2 weeks, but if you want to go back longer than that, there is a strong case to be made for Connors or Casey that they've actually been better. So if I don't know how you want to define the best plays, any one of those 3 I think would be fair.
Do we throw Keegan in that because he's pushing like 20% ownership?
Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
so
that's fine.
Keegan's going in at 73. We'll put Burns in at 75. So we have $7,900 per player left. We could put in Ancer and Connors, Ancer and Casey, or we can try to go with like Charlie Hofman or Emiliano Grillo, who is popping up with a bit of ownership, and maybe get up to Daniel Berger.
Oh, if we can get Berger into a lineup, I like that. So we'd have to go Grillo and Berger. Would that fit?
If we put in Berger with Spieth, Hovland, Bradley, and Burns, that leaves us with $7,100 left. So we would have our pick of Grillo, Kirk, Kokrak, and that's kind of it until you get down to Sink and Charles and those type of guys.
I would not mind Grillo on Paspalum. I would not mind that one bit.
All right, so that's the play of the good plays lineup for the final time. Maybe I'll try to do one more on the live show. Maybe the people in the chat can help me out with that. But the lineup is Spieth, Hovland, Keegan, Burns, Berger, and Grillo. Leaves $100 on the table. I'm entering it in the Millionaire Maker right now. Don't dupe me.
We're going to split it 900 ways.
I can't imagine anyone would tune into this show and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna tail Pat's lineup." Here we go.
That's true. That we just made in 30 seconds at the end of the show. Good luck.
So yeah, I will put all 3 iterations in the newsletter that will come out probably on Monday night, or actually probably Tuesday night. When I put that out, I'll have all 3 iterations just to see how that shifted throughout the course of the week. Because the first one that I put in, I believe, was. Let's take a look at this right here. It was, the initial pricing one that I did was Spieth, Schauffele, Berger, Casey, Palmer, Cam Davis. And then the Byron Nelson.
Ours better.
You like that one better?
I like ours better.
You like ours better? So do I, actually.
Yeah.
The second one I did with Raza was Xander, Hovland, Berger, Casey, Bradley, and Siwoo Kim.
That's not bad. I think I still like ours, though.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to win $1 million. I'll cut you off a piece when we win. Thanks to your help on
Appreciate
this
that.
one.
Well, especially because you don't have to pay taxes on it. So just like slide me some later.
I mean, just play all your things through my account. And I can win the money and take all the glory. And then you won't have to pay the taxes. That's the move.
That's the move. That's the move.
I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME on Twitter. You can follow Rick at RickRunGood on Twitter and at RickRunGood.com. We have a ton of content coming up this week. Subscribe to Mayo Media Network, and remember to subscribe to Rick's Rick Run Good channel on YouTube as well. Support the cause and everyone around the industry this week. Give the retweets. And hey, if you retweet me and you give the rating and review on the podcast and sub to the newsletter and sub to the network, you're in a draw to win like upwards of like $800. And if you follow me on Twitter, I'm giving away 20 Millionaire Maker tickets up on Twitter starting Tuesday at noon Eastern time as well. I'll be back live Wednesday noon Eastern time on Mayo Media Network. Then Cut Sweats live on Friday afternoon. Thank you all for tuning in. Go get that Fantasy National membership right now. FantasyNational.com/Mayo. Get you 20% off. The monthly gets you major to major, so you might want to take advantage while the getting's good, okay? I'll see you next time.
Fat Mayo Experience! Experience!